Welcome to the 5-Minute History Podcast from 5minutehistory.com, where we take a historical look at things in about 5 minutes. If you enjoy the show and would like to support us, please consider buying us a coffee. Head on over to 5minutehistory.com/coffee to see how. This is episode 83, The History of Gin. Let's talk about gin. Crisp, botanical, and endlessly versatile, it's a drink that's been around for centuries and has managed to go from a medicinal remedy to a cocktail menu mainstay. But how did that happen? How did juniper-flavored spirit become one of the most culturally loaded and widely loved drinks in the world? The story of gin is as complex and intriguing as the drink itself. We start way back in the 11th century, not in a bar, but in a monastery. Monks in Italy were infusing alcohol with juniper berries, mainly for medicinal reasons. Juniper had long been believed to have healing properties, good for digestion, circulation, and a variety of ailments. These early herbal infusions were the ancestors of gin, although they were more focused on treating symptoms than on mixing cocktails. The first recognizable version of gin, as we know it today, originated in the Netherlands in the 16th century. There, a drink called Geneva became popular. It was a malt-based spirit flavored with juniper and other botanicals. It still exists today, but it was originally intended more as medicine than a tipple. Dutch distillers were producing it in increasing quantities, and it wasn't long before their English neighbours took notice. During the 80 Years' War, English soldiers fighting alongside the Dutch got a taste for Geneva. They brought the habit back to England, referring to it as Dutch courage. Then, when William of Orange took the English throne in 1688, things really took off. He encouraged domestic spirit production and put heavy taxes on imported French brandy. The result? An explosion in gin distilling across England. What followed next is infamous, the gin craze. By the early 1700s, gin was everywhere. It was cheap, easy to make, and unregulated. You didn't need a license to sell it. People bought it on the street, in back alleys, from market stalls. Entire neighbourhoods, especially in London, were caught up in it. People experiencing poverty, in particular, turned to gin as a means of relief from their hard lives. It wasn't just the volume of consumption that alarmed authorities. It was the effects that concerned them. Gin was blamed for a rise in crime, social unrest, and general misery. The nickname Mother's Ruin comes from this era, and for good reason. William Hogarth's famous 1751 engraving, Gin Lane, painted a stark picture of the spirit's impact on society. To combat the crisis, Parliament introduced a series of gin acts, starting in 1736. The laws tried to limit consumption by taxing and regulating the industry. Early attempts failed. There were riots, illegal sellers, and widespread resistance. However, the 1751 Gin Act had more teeth, and eventually gin consumption began to decline. By the 19th century, significant changes began to occur. The Industrial Revolution brought technological advances, including the invention of the column still. This allowed distillers to make cleaner, more neutral spirits. These spirits were perfect for blending with botanicals, which helped gin shed its rough, fiery image. This is when London Dry Gin emerged. It was crisper, lighter, and far more refined than the earlier versions. Gin was now a respectable drink, and it began showing up in gentlemen's clubs and cocktail books. Its reputation had finally started to recover. At the same time, gin became a staple in the British Empire. Colonists and soldiers stationed in tropical climates used quinine to fight off malaria. The quinine was dissolved in water, sweetened to mask the bitterness and mixed with gin. This was the birth of the gin and tonic, a drink that quickly became part of colonial life and eventually made its way back to Britain. Then came Prohibition in the United States. From 1920 to 1933, alcohol was banned, but gin didn't go away. In fact, it flourished. Unlike whiskey, gin doesn't need to be aged. It could be made quickly and cheaply, often in secret. Bathtub gin, as it came to be known, wasn't always safe, but it was accessible. People drank it in speakeasies across the country, and it became the spirit of the Jazz Age. Classic cocktails like the Martini and the Tom Collins cemented gin's place in American culture. Even when Prohibition ended, the spirit stayed popular, at least for a while. However, by the 1960s and 1970s, gin began to lose ground. Vodka took over as the drink of choice, marketed as smoother, more modern, and less complicated. Gin was seen as old-fashioned. That all changed again in the early 2000s. The craft spirits movement arrived, and with it came a gin renaissance. Small distilleries began popping up everywhere, experimenting with unusual botanicals, local ingredients, and creative branding. Suddenly, gin was cool again. Now, there's a gin for every palate: floral, spicy, citrusy, earthy, you name it. There's gin with lavender, gin with seaweed, gin with saffron, and it's not just in the UK. Spain has developed its own strong gin and tonic culture. Japan produces elegant, delicate gins using local botanicals such as yuzu and Sancho pepper. In the United States, gin has made a comeback in the hands of craft distillers who aren't afraid to innovate. At the same time, traditional brands like Tanqueray, Beefeater, and Bombay Sapphire continue to thrive. They've adapted to changing tastes while staying true to the core of what gin is meant to be: a bold, characterful spirit built around the complexity of botanicals. Gin's global popularity today is remarkable, considering its turbulent past. It's been celebrated, condemned, banned, and reborn. And through it all, it has continued to evolve. Unlike many other spirits, gin isn't defined by aging or region. Its identity comes from the balance of flavors in the botanicals and the skill of the distiller. That gives it room to grow, to adapt, and to remain endlessly fascinating. From monastic medicine to modern mixology, gin has proved it's more than just a drink. It's a reflection of the time and place in which it's made. And whether you enjoy it in a martini, a G&T, or something entirely unexpected, there's a piece of history in every glass. Thanks for listening to the 5-Minute History Podcast from 5minutehistory.com. If you enjoy the show and would like to support us, please leave us a review wherever you get your podcasts, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. If you would like to support us more directly, then please consider buying us a coffee. Head on over to 5minutehistory.com/coffee to see how. You may also be interested in our other 5-minute podcasts, which you can find at 5minuteproductions.com. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time.
This is your before and after story. Prepare for an incredible career in nursing. At Southeastern College, experience expert hands-on training. Learn real-world skills in our professional lab and simulated settings. And train for opportunities as a practical nurse, registered nurse, or career advancement with our RN to BSN program. At Southeastern College, your future is bright. Visit sac.edu to get started.